What's happening? Happy Thursday to all of you. Thanks for joining me as always. It is very much appreciated. I'm going to tell you a little bit later on in this podcast why I'm not as worried, I'm not as panicked about finding a left tackle as I was, say, a few days ago. We'll get into that a little bit later, but I want to start here. My opinion is my opinion, and how I view things is not telling you how to fan. That is not what I'm trying to do. That is not my job. I give you my opinion, my takes, my thoughts, and you do what you do. But the one thing I can't stand is hyperbole. And I think we are suffering from some hyperbole regarding this Patriots offseason and what some people are saying and what some people are thinking. I have heard that the Patriots are punting on 2024, that they're punting on this offseason as if they don't care. They don't care what they're doing. They don't care about 2024. Let's just push this thing to 2025. And I'll tell you, to me, it is somewhat weird to make a grand proclamation about how a team feels about this coming football season when we are, last time I checked, roughly 6 months away from when they kick the football off and it actually matters. To make any kind of grand proclamation before April 1st is a little bit weird. Let's first start off with free agency, okay? Free agents are still out there. There are guys that are on the market that can help this team right now. You look at left tackle. You've got Charles Leno. You've got Mekhi Becton, Humphreys, Donovan Smith, Bakhtiari, who wants to play. Yes, those guys have questions. But every tackle on the free agent market had questions. Tyron Smith had questions about his health. Jonah Williams had questions about whether he was a left tackle or a right tackle. You still have names out there. Free safety, Justin Blackmon, Justin Simmons, Quandre Diggs, and more. Cornerback, Steven Nelson, Stephon Gilmore, Tre'Davious White, Xavier Howard. All of those guys are still on the market. So it's just weird to me. On April 1st, it would be weird to me that people are trying to tell me that this offseason is just a punting offseason, that this team couldn't care less about 2024 on the field. It's just strange. And it's way too early. It's way too early because of those names I just gave you. And it's way too early because we are still a month away from the draft, folks. We are 5 weeks away from the draft. 5. In going into this offseason, what would you say was priority number one to build this football team? Was it free agency or was it the draft? I would say it was the draft. You always start a rebuild through the draft. That's how you do it. That's how every team has done it. Cincinnati Bengals, when the Chiefs brought in Patrick Mahomes, they drafted Tyreek Hill, they drafted Kelsey. San Francisco, we've gone through that. Every team in the league that is contending right now has built most of their team through the draft. The Detroit Lions is a great example. We can go through every single one of them out there. So when you walk into an offseason, you should understand that the number one way to build your team, to add to your team, is through the draft. It's not through free agency. Yes, you can dip your toe in free agency. You can sign a few big names. That will obviously impact the football team. But first and foremost is the draft, and we're still 5 weeks away. 5 weeks away from the draft. Now, maybe I'm unaware of this. Maybe somebody can enlighten me. Maybe I didn't read this. I'm just completely in a fog. Is there some kind of April 1st trading deadline in the NFL that I don't know about? Did I miss something? All of a sudden, if April 1st hits, can players no longer be traded? They can no longer be signed? They can no longer be drafted? Like, what are we doing here? If you want to tell me that this team punted in the offseason and they're not worried about 2024 trying to win more games this coming season than they did last season, then tell me that in July or August. When we get there, then you can tell me that. But I wasn't aware of some arbitrary deadline that's happening. I wasn't aware that the NFL offseason ends in like a week. I didn't know that. I had no clue. Somebody should tell the NFL. Let's just pack the bags. See you guys in September. I just don't understand this idea that they're punting the offseason when it's March 21st. It's silly. What if the Patriots in 3 weeks go out there and trade for T. Higgins, or they trade for DK Metcalf, or they trade for Cortland Sutton, or they trade for Brandon Ayuk, or they trade for an offensive lineman like Conklin in Cleveland? All those people that said, oh, they're just punting on the offseason, they're going to circle back and say, oh, mea culpa, my bad. I was probably jumping a little too far ahead by saying that the offseason was a failure, that this team was punting on everything in March. I was probably rushing to judge. All right, before I continue, I have a lot of thoughts on this. Give us that thumbs up. More likes means more eyeballs. Build the community out. Always love and appreciate the likes, the comments, and the subscriptions. Trying to hit 3,000 subscriptions by the national championship game on April 8th. We're a little over 300 subscriptions away, so it's going to take a major push. And the way you can help us out is by giving us those thumbs up. Give us that like. Also subscribe, rate, and review at Spotify and Apple Pods. Getting some heavy traffic over the past couple of weeks on Spotify and Apple Pods. I appreciate every single one of you who listen to this audio on demand. Let me ask you this. Does a team that is supposedly punting do the following? Offer Calvin Ridley $40 million guaranteed. Does that sound like a team that's punting on the offseason? Willing to offer Ridley $40 million guaranteed, well above what anybody thought? These people that are saying that this team is punting on the offseason, I would absolutely love to go back a month ago and find out what they would be willing to pay Calvin Ridley. And don't give me the, surface level, pay him whatever you got to pay him. You have the money to pay him. That's not how this works. Were you willing to pay Calvin Ridley $25 million a year? Were you willing to pay Calvin Ridley $50 to $55 million guaranteed? The fact that they offered that guy the contract that they offered him tells me that they're not punting. They were aggressively trying to significantly improve this football team with that offer. I don't know how you can look at that and say this is a team that doesn't care. That's not trying to make this team better. It doesn't equate. Would you pay Mike Onwenu almost $40 million guaranteed if you were just punting? Wouldn't you just say, well, let Onwenu walk. Let Onwenu walk into free agency. Let him sign somewhere else. He's just a guard. We got City, so we can throw something out there at tackle. No big deal. Would you give Mike Onwenu $40 million guaranteed if you just didn't care about this offseason, if you weren't trying? If you weren't doing anything? The New England Patriots right now are 9th in full guarantees. They're 9th in the league. Out of 32 teams, last I checked, they have given out the 9th most in full guaranteed money this offseason. Does that sound like a team that is punting? Not to me. They are 5th in the NFL out of 32 teams in first-year cash. So let's try to make logic out of this. Let's try to think this through. You're telling me that this team is punting. This team is punting on the offseason. They're punting on 2024 when they have dumped the fifth most amount of dollars into this year, into first-year cash. They are going to pay the 5th most in dollars in the year 2024 via free agency this offseason. Is that a team that is punting? Before I continue, thank you to Rich Don 8 for the $5 super chat. Much appreciated. By the way, I did a Patreon pod last night. Exclusive content, broke down wide receiver, the latest reports about the Patriots. Looking at wide receivers. You want to check that out? You got to join the Patreon. Exclusive content, $5 a month. $1.25 a week. Did that pod last night. Also did a chat on Discord on Tuesday night. And tomorrow I'm going to do the mailbag. So if you want to check it out, patreon.com/Nick Cattles, Cattles. Thanks, Rich Don 8, for your support of the program by sending that $5 super chat. Let's also not forget this. The Patriots are 9th in fully guaranteed money this offseason. They're 5th in first-year cash spent. And they are also expected to have a conversation and start negotiating with Christian Barmore on a contract extension. Now, here's my guess. My guess is that Christian Barmore will get an extension before this season kicks off. How much money do you think Barmore is going to get? He's going to get tens of millions of dollars guaranteed. Christian Wilkins' contract was through the roof. So if people say, oh, that doesn't count or that hasn't happened yet, I understand. But when you are doing a budget, if you're doing a personal budget, if you're running a business and doing a budget, you always think about what we are doing right now in this moment and what else is coming down the pike, right? If you run a bar, what does your food cost? Not what does your food cost right now? What does the food cost for a week? What does the food cost for a month? What is the food cost going to be for a year? So Elliot Wolf understands that they're going to go after a Christian Barmore extension. That's going to be tens of millions of dollars more poured onto this. Even with just the Barmore extension, we could easily see the Patriots be in the top 5 or so in spending this offseason. And that's without Calvin Ridley taking the deal. So I just don't know how you can look at this and say the team is punting. It doesn't add up to me. Maybe it adds up to you, but it doesn't add up to me. It doesn't make any sense given what we know, what has actually happened. It's just unreal. Andrew Callahan on his Pat's Interference podcast last week, I saw the pod that he did with Jeff Howe, two friends of the program, and Andrew went through the money and the 90% of the salary cap floor, all those things, right? And Andrew, by his math, he says the Patriots still have to spend $20 to $25 million this offseason to get to 90% of the salary cap floor. And when you look at the, following years, the cap is going to go up. So they know they have to spend more money. They still have the Duggar transition tag out there. They still have to get Barmore done. So when you look at this in totality, when all is said and done, when we're actually going to be at minicamp, I think the Patriots will likely be, once that Barmore deal is done, in the top 5 or 6 in money spent this offseason. And they try to spend more on Ridley. If they landed Ridley, they would have been in the top 3, if not number 1. So what exactly are we doing other than creating a narrative and trying to throw gasoline on a fire by saying this team is punting? I also love this idea. They haven't been aggressive, Nick. They haven't been aggressive. The Ridley contract offer wasn't aggressive. Getting Owenu done wasn't aggressive. Also, how do we know? How do we know how aggressive the Patriots were? Reportedly, they were going to go after Tyron Smith. Smith was a target. So how aggressive did they get with Smith? And did Smith choose the Jets because the Patriots weren't aggressive enough? Or did Smith choose the Jets because they were the Jets? I'll get into that in a minute. But how do we know? Going back weeks ago, I said this. I try to warn everybody who watches and listens to this podcast. I try to warn all of you that people were going to try to run with their narratives because that's what they do. And they have already predetermined how they're going to feel about this offseason unless the Patriots went out and spent $250 million in guaranteed money. And I warned you, and I said this. You can go back and listen to prior podcasts. I said this. It's on the record. I said weeks ago, it takes 2 to tango. The player ultimately makes the decision. And I know that a lot of people want to push this idea that, just pay the most money. And if you pay the most money, you'll get every free agent that you want. That's not how it works. Because not every single solitary free agent is in the same situation with the same circumstances. Not every single solitary free agent is just looking for the most money. Let's go back to Tyron Smith. Did you see what Tyron Smith said about his decision signing with the Jets? He said that he played against Aaron Rodgers when both were in the NFC, said the quarterback is, quote, extremely intelligent, and I know we're always going to be on the same page. He also referenced the additions of Morgan Moses, John Simpson. He thinks the Jets' offense is going to be strong. And here's what he said. Here's the money-making quote. I feel like it's an amazing new start. What's being built here is amazing. It's built to win. That's the point. Did the Patriots not get Tyron Smith because they weren't aggressive enough or didn't go after him? Or did they not get Tyron Smith because Smith looked at it and said, I'd rather play with Aaron Rodgers, have a chance to win, maybe even win a Super Bowl. I'm 33 years old. I've had a litany of injuries throughout my career. It's not the best idea to go to a football team in New England that has no quarterback outside of Jacoby Brissett that I even know of. Right now, they've got Mike Owenu, who's going to play tackle. I don't know if he's going to be any good at that position. They won 4 games last year. Does Tyron Smith want to end his career if this is his last season, which it might? Does he want to end his career on a 7-8 win team at best? So it's not always about the money. It is not always about the money. I have taken jobs before. I have moved before, and it wasn't about the money. It was about opportunity. It was about who you were going to work for. Did you believe in those people? These are real-life decisions, families. Mike Evans wanted to test free agency, decided not to because his girlfriend said, and shut it down. So I know we just like to paint this as throw the bag on the table and you got the guy. Devin Allen jumps in with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Devin. The free agent class this year was trash. Patriots fans are used to the Pats not playing rookies. The new regime is going to play them all a lot. It's a great point by Devin. It's one that I want to drill down on, this free agency class and what was actually out there. Because a lot of times people just, again, they suffer from hyperbole and they try to paint this picture as if there were a billion options for the Patriots to go out there and land significant free agents that would impact this offense. So I want to take a look at that a little bit deeper in a couple of minutes, but I do think that Devin is onto something. You know, we talked to Evan Lazar yesterday on the show, and Evan brought up, you know, offensively, when you look at free agency, and Evan wrote about this going back a month or two ago on Patriots.com. If you look at free agency, offensively, as soon as Evans and Pittman and Higgins were taken off the market, how many guys were truly difference makers on that side of the football that you could bring in? And how did the Patriots respond to that? What did they do? Calvin Ridley was one of those guys. Offered him $40 million guaranteed. Lost out on the crazy Tennessee offer. I'm fine with it. Tyron Smith was a target. Again, we just went through that. Why did Smith say no to you? So it's a great point by Devin, and I appreciate the super chat. Mike Williams is another guy. You could look at Williams and say he made the same kind of decision that Smith did. Mike Williams, 30 years old, right? About 30 years old, has an injury history. If you're Williams, do you want a shot at playing with Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, playing for a team that's likely going to have a fantastic shot at the playoffs and maybe even a shot at the Super Bowl? Would you rather join that situation or this situation? The ability to land people that will make a difference doesn't just come down to money. It also comes down to what you are selling. Why do you think Elliot Wolf and Mayo went out there during the combine and they try to pitch culture and they try to pitch how it was going to be a different vibe? Because they couldn't pitch the offense. They couldn't pitch the quarterback. They couldn't pitch the tackles. They couldn't pitch a 4-win team. That's why all those people freaking out about, oh, the culture and blah, blah, they're not giving you specifics. What are they going to say? If you're Joe Douglas, you walk into the room and you say, we've got Aaron Rodgers, we've got Morgan Moses, you know, we've got Tyron Smith signed up, we've got Breece Hall, we've got Garrett Wilson. We won more games than we should have after Rodgers blew his Achilles out last year. We got a chance to get to the playoffs. We got a chance to win a Super Bowl. If you're Elliot Wolf and Gerard Mayo, you walk into the room and you go, we just traded Mac Jones. We got Jacoby Brissett. We got Mike Owenu at right tackle. Still trying to figure out left tackle. We'll get there. Wide receiver 1 to be determined. Think about that free agency pitch. But of course, if you just drop the money, all is well to some people. And how much more are you willing to pay? Are you willing to pay Tyron Smith $15 million guaranteed, $20 million guaranteed? Are you willing to pay Mike Williams $20 million? Like, how far are you willing to go? Because you're going to have to overpay just by how much. All right, don't forget quickly, give us that thumbs up. Let's build the traffic, build the community. More thumbs means more eyeballs. Fantastic numbers the past few days. We've broken 4,000 views multiple times in the last week. This podcast, this show is building and building as an alternative to the rest of what is being said out there. I appreciate that. I respect all of you, and we are building this together. I've said it from day one. The thumbs up to beat the algorithm. The subscriptions are climbing, trying to hit 3,000 by April 8th. Let's get that done. And people are signing up for the Patreon page for the exclusive content. Last night, had our podcast about the wide receivers and what the Patriots are reportedly looking to do. We had the mailbag coming up tomorrow. We had a chat earlier in the week on the Discord. And I'm going to have a lot of playoff content on that Patreon page. We're going to do some select Celtics and Bruins post-game. So you want to check that out, patreon.com/Nick Cattles, $5 a month. All right, so when you look at all of it, right, the free agent class, and just to drill down more on what Devin said earlier in his super chat, the free agent class on offense really came down to three guys. And we had said this at the time. It came down to Calvin Ridley, Tyron Smith, and Jonah Williams. The Patriots offered $40 million guaranteed to Calvin Ridley. He said thanks, but no thanks, because he got paid outrageously by Tennessee. And I don't even think he would have signed with the Patriots, even if the Patriots trumped the offer of Tennessee, because I think he wanted to stay in the South. And I think that's why all of those leaks came out days before he made his decision about leaning towards staying in Jacksonville, even though Jacksonville, we know, had a much worse offer, or at least a worse offer than the Patriots did. So they went after Ridley aggressively. They missed. It happens. They were targeting Tyron Smith. He decided to go to the Jets. We talked about that one. The one that's left is Jonah Williams. Now, reportedly, Jonah Williams was seen by the Patriots as a right tackle. Guess what? You know who else saw him as a right tackle? Cincinnati. Because they moved him from the left side to the right side last year. You know who else sees Jonah Williams as a right tackle? Arizona, who just signed Jonah Williams. That's what they're going to do. Arizona's going to move Johnson from the right to the left. So Jonah Williams is a right tackle. When you look at it from 30,000 feet, the people that are saying they're punting, they didn't punt on Jonah Williams. They looked at Jonah Williams and said, he is a right tackle. We are going to pay $38 million guaranteed to Mike Owenu, and he is going to be our right tackle. So when you figure out that the plan is Owenu at right tackle, then it makes sense, doesn't it, that they said thanks but no thanks to Jonah Williams, who they saw as a right tackle? It does to me. Makes sense to me. And this doesn't mean you can't be disappointed in some of the things this offseason. I have been disappointed. I wanted them to trade for Keenan Allen. They didn't do it. I'm disappointed in that. I would have liked them to be interested in Mike Williams, but I don't think he signs with the Patriots. I think he ends up signing with the Jets because he has a chance to win, and he's got Aaron Rodgers throwing him the football. And he has Garrett Wilson out there helping him, which means he's going to get more open targets, which means he's going to catch more footballs, which means Schkarol, if he stays healthy, next offseason. And I am disappointed that the Patriots weren't really linked to any big difference maker on the defensive end. So I do have my disappointments. But I'm not sitting here telling you they're punting on the offseason and that they don't care about 2024. I think that is hyperbolic. And I think it's being said to further narratives. And I'm just not buying it. And I just gave you all the reasons why. I'd also add this. If I see holes, if Drygo Arts FX sees holes, if Val sees holes, if Rob D sees holes, John, Flying Elvis, all of you in the chat right now, right? Dennis, if we all see some of the holes that the Patriots have right now, do we not think Elliot Wolf sees those holes? Unless Elliot Wolf is absolutely freaking clueless, and there's no evidence of that. As a matter of fact, people will tell you that he was ready for this job. He has a great resume. He has tons of experience. He has a fantastic reputation throughout the game. So I'm supposed to believe that Willie in Watertown knows that the Patriots need a left tackle, but Wolf is just throwing his hands up in the air and going, ho, I don't know what to do. Maybe Elliot should take phone calls from local sports talk show hosts because they seemingly have the plan, even though many of them don't even have a plan. They just want to tell you that the Patriots plan is not a good one. So we all see the holes, but I'm supposed to expect that this front office and Elliot Wolf doesn't see them. He doesn't understand. He obviously knows they need to upgrade the wide receiver room. He would not have gone out there and offered Calvin Ridley $40 million guaranteed if he didn't believe that. That is evidence that he understands. I would imagine that Wolf has a plan. He's been sitting and waiting for this opportunity for what, 20 years? He was brought up by his father. He spent every second of his life talking to his dad. Do we think that he just has no plan? And I'm not telling you that it's a great plan. I'm not telling you it's going to be a successful plan. But what I am telling you is Elliot Wolf is well aware of what this team needs. He's not a moron. He might end up not being a very good GM, but he's not an idiot. He's not an idiot. So I've been saying this, and I'm going to continue to say this. If you want to tell me that the Patriots are punting on 2024, you can tell me that in July. You can tell me that even if you want to May 1st, because I will say, and I've said this, and I'll continue to say this, if on May 1st, if we get past the NFL draft in late April, and this team doesn't have suitable answers at left tackle and a significant improvement in the wide receiver room, somebody that you can buy into being a true number one, right? And they don't have a young quarterback that you can develop and believe in. If we are looking at this same kind of team with a lot of these same questions on May 1st, then I am going to eviscerate Elliot Wolf. I am going to blister the Patriots organization. I am going to rip them from pillar to post. If we are sitting there post-draft and saying, well, they didn't add this, they failed to add this, they failed to add this, that to me is a problem. That to me is when we absolutely go after Elliot Wolf in what this offseason was. But in late March, more than a month before the draft, when free agents are still out there, we're going to sit here and say that they're punting? I don't get it. Well, I don't get it on an honesty level. I don't get it. All right, so I did some digging. Let's move on. Left tackle. Many people, including myself, very concerned about left tackle. But I'm not panicking just yet. And actually doing some digging over the past couple of days has made me feel a little bit better about what's going on. You might think I'm crazy. Stay put. Stay put, because I will share with you that digging that I did and why I feel not as crazy, worried, panicked about left tackle. I'll share that with you in a minute. Don't forget to give us that thumbs up. More likes means more eyeballs. Twitter, Facebook, especially YouTube. Let's beat that algorithm. Give us that thumbs up. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, trying to hit 3,000 subscriptions by April 8th. Rate and review on Spotify and Apple Pods. And we got our Patreon page. You can check out the details, patreon.com/Nick Cattle, Cattles. Okay, so if the plan is going to be Chuck Okorafor and Mike Owenu at tackle, I don't like it. It's too risky. Owenu has to prove that he is an every week right tackle, that he can do that job. We have to see that play out. I would not be pumped and jacked if you've got Owenu on the right side and Okorafor, who's played all of 2 snaps at the NFL level, on the left side. Yes, he played it in college, but I'm not walking into this season with a guy who's played 2 snaps in the NFL left tackle and a right tackle who was mostly a right guard. I think that would be a disaster. Wouldn't be happy with that. So left tackle is a top priority. But here's the thing. Teams know what other teams are doing and what they're thinking. Elliot Wolf, I would have to imagine, and the rest of the front office is well aware of what the other 31 teams want to do. They are well aware of what the needs are for each of those 31 teams. So I started to think about the numbers game. If I were Elliot Wolf or you were Wolf, and I'm sitting there and I need a left tackle, you know what I'm doing? You know what questions I'm asking? I'm asking, number one, who else needs a left tackle? Number two, what are the other needs for those teams? And number three, how many tackles are actually out there for the getting? Those are the questions that I'm asking, right? So let's look at the numbers games. As far as teams, and I pulled this from Bleacher Report earlier in the week, as far as teams that need a tackle, one of the top three needs, right? If you're looking at teams across the league, what teams have tackle as a top three need? There are 12. There are 12 teams that you would argue have tackle as a top priority. I'll tell you those teams, right? I'll give you those teams' names. Obviously, the Patriots in our own backyard. The Ravens, who just signed Josh Jones, so you could probably wipe them off the list. The Cowboys, the Packers, the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Saints, the Steelers, the Niners, the Seahawks, the Titans, the Commanders. Those are the teams, 12 teams. Again, Jones just signed with the Ravens, so you can probably knock them off the list. So now you have 11 teams. You have 11 teams that have tackle as a top three need. Now you move on to the next thing. How many options are actually out there via free agency in the draft? And so I wrote down some names. Some of the top remaining free agents: Leno, Bakhtiari, Humphreys, Becton, Smith, and Fleming. Those are 6 NFL tackles. Now, I'm not telling you they're all healthy. I'm not telling you they're all top-level guys. But all 6 of those guys that I just named are legitimate NFL tackles. You can put them in, you can play them, and they will be solid for you most weeks. So you've got Leno, Bakhtiari, Humphreys, Becton, Smith, and Fleming. Those are 6 free agents out there that could still be decent options at tackle. Then you look at the draft. I pulled Nate Tice's top 50 prospects, his list at Bleacher Report. Scratch that, Yahoo. So when you look at Nate Tice's top 50 prospects at Yahoo, 10 of his top 50 prospects are tackles. Joe Alt, Olu Fashanu, J.C. Latham, Fa'utanu, Mims, Fuaga, Sumatia, Morgan, Guyton, Paul. You've got 10 guys. Now, I'm not a great mathematician, but here's why I'm not freaking out about tackle just yet. Again, if you end up with Okorafor and Owenu, I am freaking out. I don't like it. But when you look at the teams that have tackle as a top 3 need, there are 11 of those teams. You have 16 tackle options available to you right now. Supply and demand. Why do you think the tackle market beyond Smith and Jonah Williams has been so slow? It's because teams know this. Teams are looking and they say, yeah, we need a tackle. But we know there are roughly 10 other teams in the league that need a tackle. We know in the draft alone, out of the top 50 prospects, there's probably 10 or 11 tackles. Right there, you've got one tackle per each team that needs a tackle. And that's not to mention guys like Leno, Bakhtiari, Humphreys, Becton, Smith, and Fleming. Supply and demand. So, yes, you need a left tackle. But just from a numbers game, you have more available tackles through the draft and free agency than the number of teams that need tackles. So that is all to say, if you're Elliot Wolf, you have a pretty good idea that you can land one of those free agents that remain, or you could draft one of those young tackles. Because there's more of a supply than there is a demand. You look at it from 30,000 feet. 10 or 11 teams, 15, 16 options. And that's, by the way, not counting other tackle prospects. That's just looking at the top 50. A guy like, Patrick Paul, he's at the end of that list for Nate Tice. There are other guys that are just below Paul that could arguably be a starting tackle by the middle to late season. And all you would need is really to maybe patch it up if you're another team, right? So that's just counting the tackles out of Nate Tice's top 50. And let's not forget, those teams that have tackle as a need, they have other needs as well. And they might prioritize those other needs over tackle. The Ravens, again, they just signed Jones. So are they going to look to draft a tackle early on? Doesn't seem like it, right? I mean, if you just signed Josh Jones, are you jumping at the chance to draft a tackle in the first 2 rounds, or are you looking to address another need? The Cowboys, the Packers, they absolutely need a tackle. Would not be surprised if they used it up. But the Chiefs, do you think the Chiefs are going to use a pick on a tackle or a wide receiver or something else? So that's why when you look at the big picture and you take a breath, you realize that there are a lot of options out there. And even though they weren't, Tyron Smith or Jonah Williams, there are still guys out there via draft or free agency that can help you fill that left tackle spot, which goes back to what I was talking about in this idea of them punting this offseason 5 weeks before the draft. If on May 1st, we're talking about Drake May at quarterback, let's say Leno or Becton at left tackle, and either a young receiver, an A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Legette, or somebody who looks like they could be a number 1 receiver, or you trade for a guy like T. Higgins. If on May 1st we're looking at that, is anybody complaining? Is anybody bitching? Other than just a bitch? Anybody? Now, if that's not the case on May 1st, and there are still issues, then again, I'm going to put a flamethrower to this place. I mean, I just think, if we're stuck with the current crop by May 1st, it's a huge, huge disappointment, and it's time to wreck shop. But I'm going to give these guys a chance through the draft to build up the depth of this team and to weaponize, quote unquote, this offense, whether it's via trade or draft. Don't forget to give us that like. More likes means more eyeballs. Also, subscribe to the channel. More people are subscribing by the day, and I appreciate that. We're trying to hit 3,000 subscriptions by April 8th. It's going to be a very tough challenge, but we can do it. We can do it together. Tell your friends, family, coworkers, all that good stuff about this podcast. Again, the Patreon, we got the mailbag tomorrow. We had our wide receiver podcast last night exclusively to Patreon members. So you want to check out that page, $5 a month, $1.25 a week. All right, let's close things out with some, by the way, and Brian got I'm going to put a flame to this place. Yeah. Yes, Al Pacino, indeed. One of my favorite scenes of any movie. I appreciate you knowing that, Brian. I really do. Dennis says, sign a free agent left tackle, less pressure on the draft picks. I agree. I would like the Patriots to sign a guy that is currently available so you have more flexibility at tackle. You have more flexibility with the draft. I don't want to pigeonhole myself if I'm Wolf. We'll see if it gets done. We'll see if they can land one of those guys. Leno. Let's not forget, Bakhtiari has history with Wolf and Highsmith from the Green Bay days. They were in the front office that drafted him. You've got Becton, you've got Humphreys, you've got Smith. So I agree with that notion. If you could sign a free agent left tackle, then you walk into the draft with a little bit more flexibility and you're not feeling nearly as much pressure to land all 3 critical positions, even if that is a bridge left tackle. All right, some quick C's thoughts before we bounce. Milwaukee last night, that's a house money game for them. House money game for the Bucks without Giannis. And I think if you're Milwaukee, you leave that game feeling very good about yourself. James Henderson asked, do you do fan Q&A on Patreon? Yeah, we do a mailbag. So that's pretty much a Q&A. We also do a chat on the Discord, which is also a Patreon thing. So again, patreon.com/Nick Cattles, $5 a month. And I'm going to add more content to that. Live post-game reaction to playoff games. I'm going to do something on draft night. Me and the people over at the Patreon, we're talking about it. So we're going to do something on draft night 1 of the draft, during the first 3 or 4 picks. All right, so house money game last night without Giannis from Milwaukee. If you're Milwaukee, you feel good about last night's game. You had a terrific fourth quarter. You threw the zone at the Celtics. C's had a little bit of trouble with the zone, which surprises me with Porzingis in the middle, but they did. Things that they could iron out. And I'm not telling you the Celtics are worse off from last night, okay? They've been incredible all year. I'm picking them to win the title. I've said it from the beginning. They're the best team in the East. They're the best team in basketball. They're the most talented team in basketball. So let's get that out on Front Street. However, if you're Milwaukee and their psyche, I think last night's game helps them. Without Giannis, and I know they play differently without Giannis. They have more spacing without Giannis. I get it. But if the Celtics battled, and they did this last year against the Bucks, they battled without a bunch of their players, right? Forced the game into overtime. And I think many of us watched that game and said, hey, that gives us more confidence in the ability of this Celtics team to win a championship because they just pushed a Giannis Milwaukee Bucks team to overtime with a bunch of backups. Yeah, it's regular season, but that'll give them some confidence. I feel the same way about last night's game for the Bucks. Yes, Portis was on a heater. But I think the Bucks walk out of last night's game and they feel good about what they did. Gives them a little bit of juice going into the postseason. Now, here's some of the good for the Celtics. Tatum at the end of the game closed it out. That's crucial. And he closed it out by being aggressive. He went to the bucket. That was good to see. The Celtics' execution with about 2 minutes or less, I thought was good, which has been a question. If we are going to question this team and we're going to criticize them for the few select games where they melt with about 2 minutes left on the clock this season, even though they've dominated most of the year, and I think that's justifiable, you can go after them for some of those, last 2 minute offensive brain farts. Then we need to look at last night, say that game was within a possession or two. Tatum took it to the bucket, got to the free throw line, finished at the rim once or twice. They executed well enough to close the door. So that is good. How about Peyton Pritchard? He had me all pumped up last night. I did not know that Peyton Pritchard versus Pat Bev was the rivalry, was the battle that I needed in my life until last night. And I wanted more of it. Pat Bev talking junk. Pritchard talking junk. Pritchard was tremendous last night. Now, here are a couple of things. Oh, and by the way, Jaylen Brown's defense on Dame Dollar was awesome. And we need to start talking about Jaylen Brown being one of the better defenders in the league now. Derek White, rightfully so, gets love. Drew Holiday, rightfully so, gets love. But Brown, this has been his best defensive season as a Celtic. He's taking the challenges. He took the Luka Doncic challenge. He took the Steph Curry challenge. Last night, he took the Damian Lillard challenge. Picking up Lillard at times, and this burns him a couple times, but I'm fine with it. Picking up Dame Dollar 94 feet. Pressuring the basketball, right? Those high pickup points. He's not getting beat as much on backdoor cuts. He's not caught watching the basketball as much as he has been caught in prior years. This version of Jaylen Brown is the best version of Jaylen Brown we've ever seen. He has been really good defensively. He's been a monster since the All-Star break offensively. His rim reads have been better this year. A little bit sloppy early last night, but overall in totality, his rim reads have been much better. His left hand finishing has been much, much better. But defensively, Jaylen Brown did a hell of a job on Damian Lillard last night. And that is tough for a guy as big as Brown is to be running around and keeping track of Dame and contesting shots and keeping the basketball from him at times. Shout out to Jaylen Brown. He's a freak. This is his, 8th year, and the guy gets better every season. I don't know what to say. So shout out to him, and I think he's got the right mentality. He's always had the right mentality. Guy's a killer. Drove us crazy Game 7 against Miami last year. Not to trigger anybody. Bad game, right? Certainly not flawless. But that dude wants to win. He plays his ass off. And I think this year, on both ends of the floor, he has shown improvement. So shout out to him. Couple of concerns before I go from last night's game. Milwaukee's physicality. Milwaukee's physicality on Tatum. I thought in the second half, especially in the early fourth quarter, Tatum was doing a lot of settling. Do not settle, Jason. Do not settle. We saw the difference. the first 8 or 9 minutes of that fourth quarter versus the final 3 or 4 minutes of that fourth quarter. Be aggressive. Be aggressive. Take it to the bucket. Attack the restricted area. Get to the free throw line. Do not settle for these nail jump shots, these step back threes. Stop settling. And a team like Milwaukee, they're going to be physical against you. And sometimes when there's physicality against Tatum, he tends to settle for stretches. Can't do it. So I was glad that last night in the final minutes, he figured it out. He got more aggressive. He got to the bucket. He scored some points. He closed the game out. But that physicality that Milwaukee brings, Middleton is not the same guy, but he can still be physical. Giannis, obviously physical. Brook Lopez, physical. Pat Beverly, he's going to be physical. Celtics have to prove that they can battle that. They can fight back against that physicality in a 7-game series and finish it up and do what we all want them to do, which is win that championship, put that 18th banner up. And I thought that physicality from Milwaukee killed the Celtics' pace offensively last night. Again, they were crawling around in the fourth quarter. The physicality and the zone defense slowed things down. And the C's have to continue to push the pace, especially against Milwaukee. They are not a very young team. Jay Crowder is older. Lopez is older. Middleton is older with a bum knee. You need to, with every fiber of your being, continue to push the pace against the Bucks. Don't let them slow the game down with their zone defense and physicality. JT's second half, again, settling. He was quiet. Got to be better. Carlos jumps in. Thoughts on the 2 KP dunks? Well, the most impressive one. Look, everybody loves slamming it on Brook Lopez's forehead, right? That was a fun time. That was a fun time. But the offensive rebound putback dunk was the best dunk. Was his best dunk of the night. Because first of all, he had to get to the rebound. And then I thought he showed a little bit of patience, slight little pump fake, and then finished at the bucket. If you get that aggression from KP, you're in good shape. All right, that'll do it for today. If something big breaks, we'll be all over it, of course, as we always are. Tomorrow, we'll be back. I'm going to hang out all day tomorrow, by the way, at the bar and watch March Madness. So we're going to roll through the pod tomorrow, and then I'm going to enjoy my weekend. Hopefully you enjoy your weekend after we get through tomorrow's pod. But again, tomorrow at 11 a.m., don't forget to give us that thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Trying to hit 3,000 subscriptions by April 8th. Help us do that by subscribing, rate, review, and exclusive content. We're talking chats. We're talking mailbag. We're talking exclusive pods like last night when I broke down the Patriots and what they reportedly want to do at wide receiver. The latest reports on that. Exclusive content on the Patreon page. We're going to add playoffs, postseason, post-game, select games. We're going to do that. We're going to have something lined up for the draft, too, for the NFL draft. So patreon.com/Nick Cattles. Until next time, thank you. I appreciate